Hello, this is another in my series on writing an expert advisor from beginning to end. In the earlier videos, I showed my basic expert advisor. There are two videos, one for Metatrader 4 and one for Metatrader 5, and they show a basic moving average cross expert advisor. In both of those expert advisors, they're basically the same just for Metatrader 4 and 5, and I've got the Metatrader 4 version open here. I have this is trade allowed check, so if not, is trade allowed, return. And that tells me whether my terminal is allowed to trade, whether I've turned on auto trading, whether this particular expert is allowed to trade, and so on. In Metatrader 5, I have the same function, although this is a custom function in Metatrader 5 because is trade allowed doesn't exist in MT5. But it does the same thing. It checks to see whether the terminal is allowed to trade and whether I have allowed auto trading. The thing that's missing from both of these is that they don't check to see if the market is currently open. So this will return true even on Saturdays and Sundays or during those periods each day when the market's closed. And the same for the Metatrader 5. So in this video, I'm going to show how you can check to see if the market is actually open and add that to these tests. And I'll be doing this for both Metatrader 4 and 5, so it won't make the video too long to do both of them. And I'll begin with Metatrader 4 and then I'll explain some of the problems that people have had in using these functions, and then I'll move on and show Metatrader 5. So starting with Metatrader 4, I have this is trade allowed function. There is a second variation of this. This is an inbuilt function for Metatrader. There is another variation of this which accepts the symbol, which in my case will be the chart symbol here, and a time. And that will return true or false depending whether the market is open for this symbol at that time. When I do call is trade allowed with symbol and time current, it will tell me if the market is open, but it doesn't tell me then if I'm allowed to trade, as in auto trading turned on and so on. So if I want to test both of those, I actually need to have two calls to is trade allowed. So I would need the original call, which simply tells me if auto trading is allowed and if the broker is allowing me to auto trade and if my account's allowed to trade and so on. And then a second call, which tells me if the market is open. So with those two statements in place, this function will now exit or return if I'm not allowed to trade, which is exactly what I want. And that's the Metatrader 4 version of this. That's all I need to do. So now that's what I need to do, but to demonstrate this is a little bit difficult with an expert advisor, so I've actually written a script. Here is my script, and it's a simple script. I just take one input, which is a start time, so I can actually vary the start time this is going to run for. I will be building up a test time with this loop for int I equals 0, I is less than or equal to 600, I plus equals 30, so I'm scanning over 10 minutes. And I'm just setting the test time to the input time plus I, and then I'm calling this function market test, building up a string, and the market test simply returns symbol, time, as in the time that I'm calling it a test here, and then the is trade allowed result. I might actually add the is trade allowed without those arguments, just so we can see that as well. So this will just call that for 10 minutes, which will actually be 11 calls, and then show the result on screen. And now just before I run the demonstration, I'll explain where people might be having some problems, and some of these might be real problems, some of them might not. I really can't confirm them. First issue is that these functions rely on data that the broker provides. If I open the symbols here and choose I'll just choose the first one here. Look at the properties of that. I can see here that the trade is from 01 to 23:59 in this case. And on Friday, it's 01 to 23:57. And there are no times for Sunday and Saturday. That function to determine if the market's open actually relies on this information, which is held inside the terminal. So it's not making calls to the broker each time. So the first problem that might be happening is that perhaps there are some brokers that are not populating this information correctly, and so you call the function and you'll get an incorrect result because the market might actually be open or closed, although this information says the opposite. The next thing that people might be finding is that they might be testing this from a demo account and then comparing these times to what they know of the physical markets. But that would be unreliable because there's no requirement for a demo account to actually show the same information as the real market. So if you want to actually test to see if your broker's giving you the right market open and closed, you'll need to do that from a live account because they could say almost anything from a demo account. The next is that there are some brokers that will have different information, and I'll need to switch accounts here so that I can show you a different result for this. So now I've switched accounts and I actually have the MetaQuotes demo account open now, and I can see here that trading is allowed from 0 to 2400. Well, there is no 2400, but what they're effectively saying is that it's open all day from Monday to Friday. So there can be a difference between brokers, which might also lead people to think this is unreliable if they're comparing results on two different brokers. The next thing to check for, you can see that this has 7 days of the week from Sunday to Saturday, but there are no actual dates. So this is assuming that these times are the same every week, every day of every week. And in fact, when we make the calls to the functions that you'll see soon, these times are actually returned as at the 1st of January 1970. So the date times that are returned as in the beginning and end of these sessions are just the number of seconds into the day for each of these. And then also, because these are only days of the week, there is nothing here to indicate that there's any difference if there is a particular day where trading is different to this. So if there is a particular public holiday where the market is closed or closed for part of the day, I don't know if the brokers adjust these times when there is a special event like that, and I suspect that they don't. So if you're testing this for a day that the market is closed because of some reason, then you might find that this will still tell you the market is open. So there are a number of things that could cause a problem there. But generally, if you're simply looking at a day of the week, open time and finish time for a session, then this should be reliable. I'll just show one more thing. I'll have to change accounts again. Now I've changed accounts again, and this time I'm not opening up a currency. I'm actually opening up the Australia 200 index. If I look at the properties there, I can see, if I just stretch this a little bit, that there are actually two sessions beginning at 0250 to 930 and then from 1010 to 2359. So not all symbols have the same time range on them. This is actually a stock exchange index, but yes, I can see here that I have two sessions for the day. I don't know of anything that has more than two sessions, but it's entirely possible, and we'll deal with that in the code to come as well. Now the Metatrader4 function simply handles this. You pass in a time and it will tell me if the time is within one of these boundaries for whatever day of the week is applicable to the time that I pass into it. But in Metatrader 5, we just have to do a little bit more work. So now that I've covered all of those issues, let me run the demonstration and show the results that I get. I have auto trading turned off at the moment. I'll just remove the candles so we've got a bit more space. Go to the scripts, is market open, drag that onto the chart. I'm going to run this across midnight, so I'll run from 23, say 57. Now, remember I'm printing out two values. The first is simply telling me is trade allowed, and I've got auto trading turned off, so I'm getting false showing in this first column all the way down. The second column though is showing me if the market is open. So I'm getting true for the first four values until 2359, when I get false until 01, and I know I've left the seconds in here just so that you can see each 30 seconds because these times typically tick over on the minute. So up to 01 the market is closed and then it's open again. If I turn auto trading on, and I'll run the same test, from 2357, and now I get true all the way down the left column because auto trading is allowed and there are no restrictions on the account. but the right hand column still turns over when the time changes and I go into market shutdown. So if you want to use this function, remember you'll need to check both of these to know whether you're allowed to trade. So now I'll move on to the Metatrader 5 version, and I'll note at this point that the function I've just showed only works in Metatrader 4. It does not work in Metatrader 5, but the functions I'm about to show for Metatrader 5 work in both Metatrader 5 and Metatrader 4. So now here is that script in Metatrader 5 is market open. That should say MQ5. I have the same input, start time. This on start is the same. I'm still building up a test time, looping through for 600 seconds, 30 seconds at a time, and building up a single message that I'll display as a comment. Here is the market test function, the same symbol, space, time to string, but now I'm calling a custom function that I've called isMarketOpen and passing in the symbol and test time. So very similar to the Metatrader 4 function, but I've written this as a custom function here. And here is the isMarketOpen function. So let's go through this piece by piece. I'm taking in the symbol and the time. I want to extract the number of seconds. Remember that the from and to times for each of those sessions is just the number of seconds from the 1st of January 1970. So effectively it's 0 as the number of days and then just seconds. So all I want for the time that I'm passing in is the number of seconds that I am into the day. So I'm declaring an MQL date time structure called mTime. I'm using time to struct time, mTime, and that will break down this time into years, months, days, hours, minutes, and seconds. And so then I can get the number of seconds into the day just by taking mtime.hour multiplied by 3600 plus mtime.minutes by 60 plus mtime.seconds. I have two working variables, a from time and a to time, because they're going to be returned in the function that I'm going to call. And then, as we saw, some instruments have more than one session. So I have a loop here where I'm going through all of the possible sessions. And you'll see here, for int session equals 0, so I'm beginning with the first session, number 0, incrementing session with session plus plus, but there is no exit statement here because I will exit based on these next two conditions that are inside the loop. So I'm effectively going to keep looping until I find that I'm either inside a session or there are no sessions for me to be inside. And now this first statement, I'm calling the function simple info session trade. That's an inbuilt function. And I'm passing into that, let me just scroll across a little. I'm passing into that the symbol, the day of the week, mtime.day of week. And I'm converting that to an enum day of week by casting. So the bracket and then the type and then a closing bracket will cast this to a variable of type enum day of week. The session number and from time and to time. So when I call this session trade function, it will return the start time and the end time of the session, and it will also return as a return from the function whether this was successful. So if I call this for a session that doesn't exist, like if I call it for session number 3, then it will return false. So if I get to the point where I'm calling this for a session that doesn't exist, I've run out of sessions, I haven't found a session that contains this time, and so I simply return false. Assuming this is successful, which it should always be when session number is 0, but let me also say, if this is a Sunday or a Saturday and the market's completely closed, then this will be the first thing that happens because there are no sessions on those days. But when I do get a session, from time and to time have both been set by this function, and I'm simply saying if from time is less than or equal to seconds and seconds is less than or equal to to time, then I'm in the middle of this range of times and I can return true, and there's no need to go on any further. So it's a simple function. It just loops through all of the sessions and looks for one that contains this particular time of day. I'll go to Metatrader 5. Now I'm in Metatrader 5 here. This is obviously another account again, so let me just check to see what the times are. I've got the Euro USD chart open, that's what I'll be running on. So if I go to symbols, Forex, majors, Euro US, let me have a look here. I can see that for this account, the session opens at 5 minutes past midnight until 23:58 on Monday. but on the other days of the week it opens at 3 minutes past midnight until 23:55. So I'll just hide the candles again. Is market open? Go from 23:57. And I can see there I have true until 23:58 and then false until 3 minutes past midnight. So I'm achieving the same result, it's just a different set of functions, and I actually have to scan through those dates and times myself. And just like with Metatrader 4, this is only telling me if the market is open. I still need to execute the other tests that I had in the Expert Advisor to tell me if I'm allowed to trade. If you haven't seen the earlier video on those Expert Advisors, I will leave a link to that video, and you can even download the code from those early Expert Advisors. Now let me just go back to the code here. If I look at the MA Cross Expert Advisor, I have this if not is trade allowed return. I'm basically saying if I can't trade, and before I get to this new bar, and this was all explained in the earlier video, so I'll go over it very quickly here. I want to get out of this function here and come back in again at the next tick until trading is allowed. I don't want to go and check the new bar. I can now add a call to a function, so I can copy this is market open function in here, and I could call that as well, and I could say if not is market open return. But that means that I'm calling that function at every tick. So the is market open function, while not incredibly heavy, it does mean that at every tick I'm going to be looping through all of the sessions for the day to determine if I'm inside a current session. And I think I can make it more efficient than that, although it does become a little more complex. So I will just pause the video and I'll update this to be more efficient. I'll create an is market open 2 and then explain how that works. So now here is the is market open 2 function. And the basis for this is that typically you'll be calling this for the same symbol repeatedly, and you'll be doing this as time moves forward. So once you're inside a session, I really don't need to scan the entire day again each time. I only need to know if you're still inside that same session. And when you leave a session and you're outside, again, I only need to know that you're inside a closed session, let's call it. So to begin with, I'm setting up some static values so that I can actually remember what's gone on between calls to the is market open 2 function. There's a last symbol, because if you call this with a different symbol to last time, then I do have to scan again. There's an is open, so that I know if the session that I found is an open session or a closed session, and then the start and the end times of the session, which I'm just initializing to 0. So the first test here, if last symbol is equal to symbol and session end is greater than session start. So this says that I'm calling it with the same symbol that I had last time, and that the session end and session start are different, therefore I've got a valid session in memory. Then the test, if it's open and the time is greater than or equal to the session start and the time is less than or equal to session end, or if it's not open, then time is greater than session start and time is less than session end. So I'm using session start and end as the beginning and end of whatever the current time period is. So if I go into that gap between two different sessions, start will be the end of the first session and end will be the start of the second session, and therefore I'm in that negative, or I'm in a closed session. And the reason I have the two situations here, is open and not is open, simply because that last minute of the previous session shouldn't be counted in the closed period. So time greater than session start instead of time greater than or equal. So if I pass all of this, then I can simply return is open, and I don't need to do any further work. I just remember where I was before. If I fall through here, then first I'm just going to set last symbol equal to symbol, just in case they were different. I have the same code here, converting the time into an MQL date time structure, and I'm still getting the number of seconds, so I know how far I am into the day. There is something else that I've missed here. So what I'm doing next, I've just declared another MQL date time, calling mtime2, and assigning time to that, and then I'm just saying the hour, minute, and second are 0. So I'm effectively bringing this back to midnight of the current date. And then day start, I'm using struct to time, so I'm converting that mtime2 back to a date time, and this is then midnight of the current day, or the current day according to the time passed in. And then day end is day start plus 86,400, which is 1 day. So day end is midnight the next day. That's just initializing these, and they will move as I scan through the sessions that are available. And that's just initializing start and end time for the current day. Again, I have the from and to time variables. And now I'm initializing the session start and the session end to the day start and the day end. The same loop here, session equals 0, session plus plus. The same call to symbol info session trade, but this time, if that returns false, I've run out of sessions, and I'm simply going to then say that the session end is the day end. Is open is false, so I've run out of sessions, means I've run out of available open sessions, so I must be in a closed session. Is open is false, and then I just return is open. I could have returned false, but I'm just returning is open. And the session end is day end. I'll be setting the session start in the rest of the conditions that we'll get to. But at worst, if there are no sessions for the day, then session start is day start, session end will be day end, and so it's an entire day of no sessions. The next test, if seconds are less than the from time, which means I found a session, but that session begins after the current time. And therefore session end is day start plus the from time, because this session end is a date time, it's not just a number of seconds. So day start plus the from time is the end of the session. And because I'm in a closed session, I set this is open equals false, and then return is open. The next is a little different. Here I'm saying if the seconds are greater than the to time. So the session that I found, my current time is after that. So if you think about something that has a single session for the day, if I'm after that session, then I'm in that closed period at the end of the day. If you think about something that has 2 sessions, I could be in that intervening period between the 2 sessions. So in that case, I'm not in a current active session, but I might be in a session to come. So I need to loop round to the next session with this loop. So all I'm doing here, I'm setting the session start, I'm moving that up, and that's day start plus to time. And then continue will just take me back to the beginning of this loop. If I get down to here, then it means that I'm inside a session. So if I am inside a session, then the session start is just day start plus the from time, and the session end is day start plus the to time. Is open is true, and I just return is open. So this is the simple case. It's this one that moves that start time up if I've got multiple sessions for the day. And then I just have a return false here, because otherwise I'll get a compiler warning for not returning a value from this function. And so the real benefit of this function, although it's more complex, once you've got it written, you can just copy it. The real benefit here is that if you're simply calling this multiple times, second by second or tick by tick, once you get inside a session, it will very quickly, in this block of code, just exit and return whether you're in the session or not. Yes, I also want to make a second call here. So I'm going to call both the isMarketOpen and the isMarketOpen2 just to show that I get the same results from both. Back to Metatrader 5. isMarketOpen. Again from 23.56. Okay. And there I'm getting the same result from both of those functions. But the second function is going to be more efficient if you're calling this tick by tick for the same symbol. And so now back in the Metatrader 5 editor, to add this then to the Expert Advisor, I'm just going to copy both of these functions, the isMarketOpen and the isMarketOpen2, so I have a choice of which I want to use. Go back to the Expert Advisor. I still need isTradeAllowed, just like with Metatrader 4. I need to know if I'm allowed to auto trade. But now I'm going to also add if I'll add a call to isMarket. I'll actually make that a call to isMarketOpen2 because it's the more efficient version. And go to the end and I paste the functions in there and there. Now I'm not going to demonstrate the expert advisor, but that will now exit from this function. Where am I? That will now exit from this function if auto trading is not allowed or if the market is closed. Something for both Metatrader 4 and 5. I have seen somewhere a suggestion of a hack to do this, and that hack was to close an order on ticket number 0 and then check the error message that comes back from that. So there will be a particular error message if the market's closed. You can't close order number 0, so you'll always get an error. But if you check the error number that comes back, then you will know if it's an error because the market is closed. It's a relatively simple hack to use, but I don't use that simply because calling the close function like that is going to be a call to the broker, where these functions that I've just shown you all happen inside the terminal. So the call to the broker is more intense, and if you do this repeatedly over a long period of time, so where the market's closed for an hour or so, you may run foul of the broker for hyper trading because you're attempting to execute functions that you can't execute. So I prefer these functions that I have, but I'll just mention that one to you if you want to use that hack. So I hope this has been useful to you. If it has, then click that like button. And if you want to see more of our videos, then click subscribe and click the bell icon to be notified when we release new videos. So until next time, thank you for watching.